served by the general public. In order to comply with this requirement, tonight's meeting is being broadcast live via Zoom and also on the district's YouTube channel. Having received confirmation that the video is streaming correctly, Board of Education President, Mr. Robert Ragland, will now call the meeting to order.
And thank you for attending tonight's blended meeting of the Southwestern City School District Board of Education, dated September 28th, 2020. While the agenda will be visible during the meeting for those watching online, you may also follow along using the agenda posted on our website at www.swcsd.us under the Board of Education tab. Please note that tonight's meeting may not run perfectly, but we are doing our best to keep things running smoothly as we continue down the path of virtual school board meetings. And with that said, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Mr. Caldwell.
Here.
Mr. Donofrio.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Schreiner.
Here.
Mr. Ragland.
Here. Next up, adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I'm happy to move that. Schreiner?
Thank you. Second. David Donofrio.
Hey, Mr. Schreiner.
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio.
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. And next up, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Kathy Johnson will move it.
Second.
I'll second.
By Mr. Donovan.
Hey, Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio.
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Mr. Schreiner.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. And tonight we have some presentations. First up is the construction update by Community Design Alliance and Shore Architects.
Thank you, sir. This is Mike Dingeldon. I guess I'm going to have Meredith change my slides for me so you can all see them. I wanted to give you a quick update. Our last update was the board retreat in February, so we've been sort of bracketed around the COVID experience here. But we actually have made huge progress in those months, and this project has been kind of the focus of both our firm and the Shores firm's work since early spring. So I want to just go through each little thing that's going on, and I'll stop for questions or I'll wait till the end for questions. But if Meredith, you can turn the slide. Our first project is the East Franklin Elementary. It's very, very close to completely finished. We keep adding phases each summer. This building has been kind of a perfect study in how to make the best of existing infrastructure. We've had a few surprises with like underground utilities and things that we've taken in on the way. But this building has turned into a really wonderful, like new elementary school. Next slide. This is our floor plan. What's really impressive about this school is the classrooms are extremely large. So it's a small school. It's only 21, 22 classrooms, but they're all, almost 900 square feet. So they make for very, very nice teaching and learning spaces. We were able to be pretty generous about our furniture layouts and the flexibility. And we even accelerated this summer because of the buildings being available in the spring to get the floor finishes done. That was going to be part of our last phase next summer. So the only thing remaining is the new furniture that we will purchase this spring. And it's what's shown on this plan in blue. Next slide. We used all the same standards from the new elementary schools across the district to sort of make our decisions. So the technology, you can see the whiteboards bracketing the technology, the reading carpet in the front middle of the room, and new LVT flooring that was just finished a couple weeks ago in each of the classrooms. Next slide. We also copied our standards for cubbies and lockers for students at different age groups, and those are all completed in these phases as well. Next slide. This is a picture of the corridor, one of the intersections. We've used about 4 different LVT colors to create some floor patterns, again, that mirror kind of some of the design ideas from the old buildings, new painting, new doors and hardware, everything but new furniture really is where this building stands today, and it's in use. Next slide. At Jackson, we are pulling this project along parallel to the new middle schools. We're trying to adopt some of the same thinking about what we're trying to accomplish with the finished product of the new middle schools and bring Jackson up to an 800 student middle school like the 4 new ones. So next slide, we are completely captured this entire existing building in our Revit software. And so you can see here by the density of the new construction where the 2 additions basically are. The classroom addition on your left there and our alternate for some additional physical education space on the right. And so this building, again, is kind of paralleling the 4 new middle schools. Although they don't have a construction manager, we're sort of pushing this along ourselves, and Gil Bain will kind of handle how we go out to bid with this for a general contractor. But it's, again, pulling alongside the new middle schools very well. Next slide. We've adopted all the same architectural details from the existing Jackson and this addition. We did decide to pull in the sort of the iconic corner windows that we're putting in the new middle schools, just to give Jackson a sense of it belongs in the same category as the new middle schools. And the next slide shows you the southern elevation of that building. You can see here at the bottom of the classroom wing and how it ties into the new entry or the old entry of the building. So everything's going to feel like it's always been there. Everything, even the brick color that we used 20 years ago, is still available. And so we're going to see a building that very much fits its original design. Next slide. So that brings us to the 4 middle schools. And again, huge amount of progress. We were at the end of schematic design when we reported to you in February. And now today we turned in to our construction managers our final GMP set, the guaranteed maximum price set. That's about a 75, 80% complete drawings for the project. We will be turning in 100% final drawings in the early part of November after the CMs give us a review of these drawings and provide us with some guaranteed maximum price proposals for all 4 schools. Next slide. This is an overview of the building. It hasn't changed dramatically in massing or program since schematic design. We have refined many, many things. We have certainly refined construction and the types of construction and the materials available from different suppliers. Again, we understand now our glass, our brick, our metal roofs, our precast concrete panels that we're employing in our sites, obviously. And in fact, at the end of this presentation, I'll show you kind of the site configurations for all 4 sites, which the early site packages are actually underway, moving dirt. Next slide. This is from the southeast corner of the building. You can see the gym wing here with the kitchen and mechanical service wing off of it. But you can see the material in the gym wing is our precast concrete panels. Again, very similar to the execution of the academy, the Career Academy. So the same kind of stuff. This panel is actually made in Grove City, Ohio. And so I think our cost access to this material is going to be very good. And I think our safety access to this material, meaning the final implementation of this, makes for very hardened building shells. So I think we're going to have a core of a building that, again, is very, very safe and very, very solid for a long time. Next slide. Our classroom wing, again, traditional masonry. Our window execution is a little different. We're using curtain, we're not using curtain wall, we're using storefront windows, which is effective. We're using the corner windows to sort of maximize our access to some daylight and to give the 5 middle schools, including Jackson, kind of a little bit of a design edge that's different than the high schools and elementary schools and intermediate schools that we've done today. So while we're using a lot of the same colors and materials, so there's going to be no doubt that this is a Southwestern city school. It's going to have its own kind of identity to help identify it as one of the new middle schools. Next slide. Here's our front entrance. We're focusing our execution of landscaping at very much the front entrance and the back student entrance. And we're trying to do that very efficiently and do it very well. And you'll see in some of the site plans how that looks from an overall view. Next slide. So right about March 8th, we planned to do what we call our department design meetings, where we met with groups of teachers and staff and parents and even students in some cases about each of our areas of the school. Of course, as we planned that and set up the dates for March 23rd, March 30th, and March 31st, we entered into the pandemic. So we had to punt, we had to sort of improvise, and Dave Stewart set us up on Google Hangouts. And we were able to meet with, I believe, probably twice as many staff in the district using the Google technology as we could have if we had only met in person. So as it seemed like it was going to be a very awkward way to take the next step in the project, it turned out to be a way to reach out to even more people. So we had lots of participation. We held all 9 of these events. They had to spread out into April to make sure we got all that working and got everybody up and running on the technology. But it went very, very well. So by the end of April, we had all of these meetings completed and we were well into the design development stage of the projects. Next slide. So this is the kind of thing that, go ahead. Was there a question? Okay, I'll continue. So these are the kinds of drawings and work we did at this department level. We dove deeply down inside the rooms. We looked at furniture. We looked at casework. We looked at technology. We looked at whiteboards, marker boards. We did all the things we needed to do to sort of get inside the room and get feedback. So we took these sort of technical drawings. And if you want to go to the next slide, and you can see our Revit model, which we built the school out of, was able to take our model and turn it into those technical drawings. But we were also able to show people the relationship of rooms and spaces through kind of just taking the roof off of our model and seeing that the furniture is actually in place. And we started talking about finishes. This was the beginning of our process, so there were no finishes yet in this view. Next slide. And so you can see here, second floor reading room. This is the media center on the right side. It's art rooms on the left side, the grand stair that takes us downstairs. This is the connecting wing in the building. This was the level that we started diving into the rooms and asking questions about what we needed to see. And then next slide. So we could take these technical drawings of lots of information and lots of detail and keep going on slides here. And we even started to be able to sort of project some views, black and white line views of the spaces. But from this process, after we did one iteration, you can see all the music furniture in these 3 music rooms here. We started to be able to create the in-room views that were able to, give people our second visit with them. Is this what you had in mind? So here's the line view of our office. We started talking about technicalities. We started talking about arrangements and adjacencies. We moved some offices around. And then we started putting this into our rendering views. And you can see here, this is pretty stunning, even for me as an architect, to see how accurate our carpets, our laminates, our finishes, our lighting, our fabrics on chairs, our signage, all these things we were able to sort of project into these views. And so this was the kind of level of information that we used. And we're starting to use this week as kind of our final review of all the details. And literally, if there is a pencil sharpener missing from the wall, it can be picked up at this level of detail. So we're looking at things very differently and giving people a real good sense of what we intend things to look like when we're done. Next slide. It's another view of the office. Keep going here. This is an interesting room. This is a multi-purpose room, MultiPurpose Studio it's called. It's about a double-sized classroom. It was part of the programming that came out of the Ohio School Design Manual. And we had lots of ideas about ways we were going to use this. We didn't need to solve the furniture ideas at this level. That's coming in our last phase. But we did need to understand is if we had different furniture layouts, how might that look in terms of how it connects to technology, how it relates to lighting, how it relates to daylight, how it relates to floor finishes. And we were able to do that. Next slide. Here's our small group rooms. These are really interesting. We've gone to 300 square foot sort of breakout rooms with all the one-to-one technology in the district and students working in small groups. We have 8 of these rooms throughout the school. We're very anxious to see how they get used. They're not just tiny conference rooms. They're kind of small classrooms that we have not decided on furniture yet, but we have decided on some of the technology and how to sort of orient them to daylight and some of the things we're doing with finishes. Next slide, I think, should show. Yeah, this is a finished room. We have this bench along the wall with a charging strip all along that length so kids can sit along there with their Chromebooks and plug into power. We can also arrange any number of different kinds of furniture in here. We're suggesting in this view the idea of using loose chairs with armchairs. But again, we're still working on the final furniture implementation. Next slide. Another view there. Here's a typical classroom. We reviewed classroom layouts today, and we still have made a few more revisions in terms of how to balance the right amount of teacher storage, the right amount of student access, the right amount of bookshelves, in addition to how to turn these sort of rigid row and column classrooms into groupings of conference tables and other things, which we'll be showing you some final views of that from the outcome of our meeting that was just today. Next slide. Here's the other view in the room. You can see how the corner windows are going to create nice diffused daylight in all these classrooms. We're still sloping the ceilings to sort of drive that daylight all the way to the corridor wall. Again, these classrooms are going to feel very light, very open, very modern. And we're very excited about that clean feel that we're getting from these views. Next slide. This is a Modular Technology Lab. Again, a little bit different furniture. We talked about lots of options. We got some samples in, and this was what the group ended on. And again, today or tomorrow and Wednesday, we're going to continue to ask the questions if we're hitting the right buttons with all these decisions. Next slide. Science lab, typical science casework and student tables. Again, the layout, the orientation, the technology, all pretty standard. The teachers really did want to build off of what we did at Jackson over 20 years ago. Hasn't changed that much in science. We're still sort of trying to figure out the creativity of how to get power to the tables and do those kinds of things. So we're working on those very hard. Next slide. Music rooms, everybody opted for flat floors, but furniture that actually tiered. And so the Wenger sort of performance furniture, it's very, very good to give us sort of this ideal sightline work without the complications and handicapped difficulties with stair stepping the actual floors of these rooms. So all of the music rooms are high ceilings and flat floors, and yet they become these kind of creative different spaces. Next two slides are the next two music rooms. So big spaces. This is obviously the media center. Really excited about these rooms along the outside wall. If you've ever been into Grove City Library, you can see these exact rooms and how they're used. The teachers and all of the schools cited that as an example. We wanted to capture that. So each one of these rooms are small sort of breakout rooms for students to do group work. They're fully loaded with technology. We're still sort of trying to decide how much diverse furniture to put in them. They all have access to outdoor daylight and fresh air. We think they're going to be really, really well-used spaces for middle school students. Next slide. Looking in more of the reading room side of the media center. Again, the very big corner windows that bracket the main entrance to the school are going to be pretty dramatic in terms of the inside and outside views as you come in and out of the building. Next slide. One more view of the media center looking north. This is the cafeteria. Again, the corner windows are a big part here. We have a raised platform that can be additional seating for the cafeteria, but it can also be used for presentations. Again, we have technology, a 16 by 10 foot screen that comes out of the ceiling and a projector that connects to it. This will be used, again, not just for dining, but for any number of organizational types of meetings and presentations. And in addition to the two large gyms, this is pretty exciting that we have 3 large group spaces in each of these new schools that are going to allow us to do all kinds of events at the same exact time because we're connected and soundproofed from one of these rooms to the next. So we're pretty excited about the ability to do all this after school large group room type of performances. That goes for music, that goes for speaking presentations, it goes for athletics. And again, they can all happen together so they're not going late into the evening. Next slide.
Mike,
Yeah.
do you want to hit the cloud-based ceilings in those and the LED lights while you're there? That's something
Sure.
new and different for us.
Yeah, we're looking at ways to be very efficient with construction. We're looking at ways to control sound. And so a continuous ceiling absorbs sound from one side. A cloud ceiling absorbs sound from 2 sides, the top and the bottom. And so we're kind of excited about breaking up this continuous flat plane of ceiling into these large clouds. The lighting will still be as efficient. And now we're using LED panels instead of light bulbs. So all those lights may look like 2x4 fluorescent fixtures, but what they are is flat panel LEDs. They use 1/10 of the power to create the same light, and the quality of light and the color of light can even be tuned to just exactly what we want it to be, and very much like daylight instead of the sort of greenish bluish haze that you used to get out of fluorescent light.
And speaking of light bulbs, what's the duration for those lights?
there's nothing that can give us the exact performance because they haven't been around long enough, but they predict 10 years plus, 30,000 hours of light time. So it's pretty exciting that they're using 1/10 of the electricity and they're going to last 10 times longer than the typical lamps do. So it's going to be very long, although we have no in-performance proof in that none of this technology has been around for 10 years yet. This is the auxiliary gym. Obviously, an additional large group space we're excited about. A gym floor, a functioning athletic space, but also a functioning performance space. Daylight, we have cowl wall up in the upper left, you see in the ceiling there, that's going to bring some south light, diffuse south light into all these spaces. So they'll be very nice and light and open spaces again. And we're adding a little bit more sound attenuation to these rooms. We're filling some of the joy space, which we don't show in this particular view yet, with some additional sound panels. The reason for that is we want to make these rooms for more than just athletic events. We want to make them for music events and other kinds of performances. So we want the sound performance to be very good. We also, obviously see the wall pads for safety, the basketball backstops that fold up to the ceiling, really good ventilation systems that bring in lots of fresh air for large groups. So we're pretty excited about the multi-use aspect of this auxiliary gym. And I think our next slide is the main gym. 863 seats, a full 100 seats more than Jackson. And so we're going to try to address that a bit at Jackson with what we'll show you in a little bit. You can see the wall pads, the access to locker rooms. The locker rooms are in a position between the auxiliary gym and the main gym so they can share servicing and connection to both. And again, the daylight feature of these gyms is going to be very nice. We're excited about that.
Question about the mixed use space. You had talked about in the music rooms that we were going to have Langer stage. Will that stage be able to be moved to these spaces for performance, or will have its own setup?
Exactly. I mean, those things can come right across the hall. The music is across the hall from this part of the school. Those can be used for the performances, just like you suggested. We will have some additional performance only kind of stage work that's in the storage room here between the two gyms, but we're hoping, because it's not cheap stuff, we're hoping to make it very flexible and very move it from place to place. So a main stage set up in this gym for one night performance could be easily moved to the auxiliary gym for a different performance on a different night when there's a basketball game in the main gym. So we love the idea that all the money you invest into sound, lighting, stage, performance stuff will be flexible and movable and not just dedicated to one room. As much as you'd love to have an auditorium, it's a one kind of use kind of space, and we're looking at something very different from that. And this gym is large enough, as you can see, there's a curtain that comes down and divides into two north-south courts and allows for two full PE courses to be happening in this gym at the same time. So we literally have 3 floors in these schools that are available for different kinds of activities, plus the cafeteria. Next slide. Little higher view. We're looking for some artistic designs that are more simple than the one we're showing here to use for the floors. We want to identify each of these schools, obviously, into their individual identities as we get past this part of all of these buildings that's the same. Next slide. These are our 4 sites. You obviously know about them and where they are. They are all underway, which is the good news. We have positive progress on all the sites. Things are happening. We're going to get the dirt moved before winter, before wet season in the spring, so that every one of the sites is ready to start moving on the buildings near the first of the year after we get bids. So quickly, the next 4 images are each site. This is Pleasantview, Norton, Finland. They're very similar because they're existing building sites, but they're both working very well now. They'll both be very nicely matched with their elementary schools in the same sites. And then the last site's probably the most unique in that it's been knit together from a lot of different pieces, but every time we work with the city to make the site better, it gets better. They've allowed us for certain things in terms of landscaping, setbacks, orientation, some additional parcels when we needed them. Our Kleinger's, our civil engineer, has figured out the best fit and the best orientation. So this is going to be one of the most interesting sites. It's going to have 2 frontages, actually 3 frontages. And so it's going to be very well seen and very well known, between Grove City Road and Demarest and the new area around Beulah Park. So pretty exciting site for this new school. That is it for me. If there's comments or questions, I'm happy to address those.
Comments, questions?
One of the things that that you had talked about as a Board of Education during our retreat session is, remember with Brook Park and the new site, the city will take over and use the old Brook Park site, which means we will not be demolishing it. And so there was some conversation at your retreat about the possibility of changing names. And so I bring that back up for your conversation and discussion at this time, because it doesn't make sense to have two Brook Parks or to change the name of the old one. Maybe it makes more sense to change this. So I throw that out there as a discussion point to see if the board would like us to proceed with that conversation or not. And so I throw it out for that purpose.
I had always just kind of thought it makes a lot of sense given the history of the space and everything to name that new one Beulah Park.
Any other comments?
So traditionally from,
I have a design question when we get to that point, but we can talk about names for now.
so traditionally from a naming perspective, if the board is interested in renaming, we go to the building, see if they have some suggestions. We put together a short list of possibilities for the community, send it out for community comment, and then bring it back for the board to make a final decision in that regard. So if that's the interest of the board, we can go ahead with that process.
That sounds good to me.
Dr. Wise, will we do the same thing for Pleasantview?
Well, with Pleasantview, we will be tearing the old one down, so we will not have two of the same. You are welcome to do that. We just need your input and direction, whether you'd like to rename it or whether you want to keep that historical piece since there's not a second building. It's from an administrative standpoint, not a big preference. It's really the direction of the board and the community.
And I think hearing from the community would be good.
I agree with Mr. Schreiner. I'd like to hear what the community thinks. It's their school and they should make that decision.
All right. So we'll proceed with that and bring that back. Not a big hurry at this point with 2022 as being kind of the opening date, but we'll move that. We won't wait till 22. We'll move that along. But we can make that happen sooner than later. And then I cut you off, Mr. Caldwell. You had a design question for Mr. Dingeldon.
I really love these renderings, by the way. I think this really gives us a chance to kind of get inside the buildings and see what they would look like. I really appreciate that. The only thing that it sparked for me when I was going through some of them was I noticed that you were looking at high top tables in some of the areas and wondering what the accommodations will be for people with disabilities or folks who, high top tables aren't all that accommodating.
It's a great question. We have to provide a mix because what the ADA law says is reasonable accommodation. So we can't have a room with only high top tables. We'd have to have a room that has a mix. We've been seeing that more and more. New projects we're opening at Canal Winchester and Worthington. They're opting for that kind of mix. And so I think the traditional classroom will be more regular height seating. But when you get into more of the lab type spaces, we're getting more and more into a countertop height. So you could sit and stand and work at something like that. But yes, you're right. Every room like that would have to have a handicapped sink, have to have a handicapped desk, and with all the equivalency and technology that anything else had. So it's a good question. And yes, we have to be sensitive and be accommodating to that.
Thank you.
Questions?
I just wanted to really briefly comment to also echo Mr. Caldwell. The renderings are simply beautiful, and I just want to thank you for all of your incredible work on this from the initial input all the way through what you've done today. It's just, I think it's gorgeous. I think the community is going to be very proud of it.
They're big buildings, 120,000 square feet, but they're going to feel nice. They're going to feel just about the right distance from the road. They're going to feel somewhat imposing to the small neighborhoods around them, but not too much so, and no more so than the elementary schools. And then on the three sites where there's elementary school that's matching, you'll see colors that are pulled through, but you won't see the same architectural massing and details. So you'll definitely know one's an elementary, one's a middle school.
Very good. Any other questions?
I have one. Mike, how long can we wait before we actually name the two schools whose names may change?
I would say to the spring of 22, because we have to approve shop drawings for the signage in the office and the signage on the building. That's really all that's going to go about it. Our drawings are going to say Brook Park and Pleasantview forever. But when you decide, we'll hold up the signage package until that spring. So I would say comfortably Christmas of 21, but absolutely spring of 22.
Thanks. I kind of like to see them going up before.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mike.
And next up, we have technology update, Brian Mulvaney.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to once again give you a brief update on what we've been doing in technology. Tonight, since Mr. Stewart in his opening of school update last meeting had a lot of technology related statistics in there, we're going to focus tonight more on some of the new teacher tools for teachers in this new environment. We've put in place a number of new tools to help them with the remote learning that students are doing now. And so that's going to kind of be our focus for tonight. And Rob Moore, our technology coordinator, he helped a great deal, although he's not going to speak tonight, he helped a great deal on pulling all this information together, as well as the statistics that Mr. Stewart shared last week. And Jason Kissel, the district technology liaison, has agreed to run us through some of the new teacher tools. So Jason, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, everybody. All the tools we poured over analysis from what teachers gave us an input, what people have been doing around the world of education, and decided that we just needed some more tools for our teachers to be more efficient in their teaching and just to kind of better support them, blended, remote, whatever they may be. So I'm going to run you through just a few of them, mainly the popular ones and the ones that really, I think, affect student learning. So first is this Gradebook Sync. So as many of you know, we strongly encourage that Google Classroom is our hub, and that teachers and students live in Google Classroom. One of our main issues with that before this school year is if you would use the gradebook in Google Classroom, you'd have to manually input those grades back into our grading system, Infinite Campus, one by one. So if you had 160 kids, you can imagine trying to input those grades, basically doing double duty. It took forever. So this sync is really easy. I just have a couple screenshots to walk you through how easy it is for teachers and for students to see their grades now in one platform instead of trying to double dip in two. So all they do is they get a little message when they go to Google Classroom, they click link to class, and they pick their class from Infinite Campus. So that's it on the first slide. Next slide. Next, they're going to go to their gradebook in Google Classroom. They pick the assignments that they want to export to Infinite Campus or Gradebook, and they just hit SIS export. That's it. Once they've already exported them, they could export them again. They can exclude assignments that maybe have an ongoing due date, or maybe it's an ungraded assignment in Google Classroom, kind of the wonders of Google Classroom in itself. But once they hit export, if you go to the next slide, they're going to get a button in Infinite Campus in their gradebook. They're going to categorize the assignments. They're going to hit save. And now all their grades have imported. Of course, there's little hiccups along the way, but for the most part, this has worked amazingly, and it's saved a bunch of teachers a ton of time. And I think most importantly, it gives kids a really consistent grade look at what their grade is. And assignments aren't waiting to be pulled over at the last minute because of the manual input time. We're getting better data for students right when the assignment's completed or soon after. So it's an awesome sync that we're really excited that we've been able to implement. Next is this, my favorite tool for sure. It's called Screencast 5, basically a screen recorder / webcam recorder for teachers and students alike. All you do is you just add this extension to your Google browser, and then you get all these options. So you can record just your browser, you can record just your webcam, you can put your mic or you can turn your webcam off. You get these drawing tools, so you can draw right on top of the screen. So if you're explaining something, you need to circle something in the middle of it, you can do that, and you just hit record. Once you hit record, hopefully this next slide will work for us decently. You get your little webcam, so you're going to see me kind of animating myself. You can make it bigger or smaller. So if I need the kids to focus on me, right, I can go in there and make it bigger, and they can have to listen to me. And then I can hide myself in the corner. I can get rid of myself altogether. You have a little toolbar down there with some mouse tools, so you can have a little circle when you click. You can have a hover mouse to kind of help the kids focus while you're making a little video, or some drawing tools. The amazing thing about this tool is it's super easy to use. You can make a 5-minute instructional video, send it to kids. It saves to your Google Drive, share it to Google Classroom so easily. And right away, we have teachers that can create content now and not just use other people's content. So you can put your face to your work, which means a lot to me. I would have definitely struggled without showing my face to my kids. So this is a huge win for us. In addition, students can record their work as well, right? So if they're recording something on the screen, they want to send it to their teacher. It can also be a great tool for students. All right, EdPuzzle is another one that we have looked into. Think of EdPuzzle like taking a YouTube video and putting questions in it that kids have to answer. So a YouTube video could be just search for, like you see on this screen, or I could take actually a Screencastify video that I made of my content, put it into EdPuzzle, add some questions in, and now I can make sure that my kids, 1, are watching the video, and 2, trying some questions for some formative assessment. So if you go to the next slide here, you'll see an example of what that looks like. So once you pick a YouTube video or one of your own videos, you can see at the bottom there, there's these little markers like halfway through, and then 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through, and then towards the end, there's 4 different markers, which means there's 4 different questions that this teacher has developed for this YouTube video, right? Whatever this content may be. It could be multiple choice or short answer questions. It's super easy for the teachers to just make this or use one from the library of thousands of videos that are already on EdPuzzle, which is great. If you go to the next slide, I think it's an example question. Yeah, so it stops the video here. You can't go on until you answer the question, right? You hit submit. You can also rewatch that portion, but it's great because it forces the student to actually have some accountability for watching a video. Couldn't tell you the number of times I've watched a YouTube video and then had to watch the whole thing again because I wasn't really watching it, right? So this is a great little tool for teachers. And another awesome thing is it works right into Google Classroom. They can post their assignments straight in. The last slide for EdPuzzle, I think, is just kind of some teacher view. You get some pretty quick analysis. You can see your students' names, who's watched it, what their grade was, when they watched it, and if they turned it in. So from the student view, that bottom picture is from Google Classroom. You can just post your assignment right in. It looks like just every other assignment that you post in Google Classroom. It's really easy for the kids to just click on that link and go to the video. Classkick's a tool we're really excited about for younger learners or EL population, students who need to use a little bit more manipulative. So think of it as a Google slide that students can interact with freely with a lot of different elements. So they can insert audio, they can insert work from their camera, they can insert a link, they can draw right on it, they can move these letters around. So we can make templates with different draggables for kids to drag around. We can teachers from the teacher side, we can add audio instructions, we can add camera pick, we can add camera screenshots, we can add drawings, we can add text. There's so many tools, and it's all built within Classkick. So we know the students working on it because they're within Classkick. You can see at the top how many slides the kid has to work through for the assignment, and it's just really, really user friendly, which is one of the main reasons why we wanted this tool. If you go to the next slide for me. This is just another example, some draggable options. It's not just for, our younger population and our ELs. Obviously, we're not teaching carbon. Well, I don't know. Maybe we are, but I don't think we're teaching, carbon atoms to molecules to our first graders, maybe. But it's it's a great tool. So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you a bit of the teacher view, just so you can kind of see what our teachers see. So there's a dashboard. You can see all the kids. They can click on individual slides. This is going to kind of go fast, so I won't talk too fast. But you can add text right on there so kids can see it. You can add stickers. You can add a little bit of feedback if you wanted to add audio feedback on that slide. One of the great things about this is if students are working on it and I'm also online as a teacher, a student can click the raise hand button and get help immediately from me right through Classkick because I'll see that they've raised their hand. So I love that feature. I think that's super powerful. If everybody's working on it at the same time, if we're for running a live session. It's really easy for students to get help. And then that's just, you know, they told me I can only talk for like 10 minutes. I could talk more, but I'll stop there and I'll kick it back to Brian, unless you guys have any questions on those.
And I just wanted to mention too, a thing that I think is nice about a lot of those tools is you think about the new state tests and all of the different, there are lots of different drag and drop and different kind of online real-time techniques and skills that kids need to have in order to do well on those tests. And I think a lot of these tools emphasize and help build those skills in our students. Mr. Ragland, did you have a question before I do the last slide? Okay, last slide here. I just wanted to,
Ryan,
oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to point, Lee Schreiner, I just wanted to point out when you said ELs, those are English learners.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, for anybody that didn't, thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. Just a few final things here on additional resources. The curriculum department put together an amazing document that has hundreds of resources available for teachers, online resources, and they have them broken down by level, by subject. And then up here at the top, they have them broken down, but if you click each one of these, it takes you down to specific resources. Many from publishers, but not all from publishers, just hundreds and hundreds of resources that teachers can take advantage of. And then, oops. And then a few quick behind the scenes tools that we put in place. You may hear us speak of GoGuardian Administrator. That's a tool that allows us to filter, monitor, and manage Chromebooks anywhere. So it doesn't matter whether a student's here inside one of our classrooms or at home, we can continue to provide safe filtering and monitoring of our devices, no matter where they are or who's using them. That tool also gives us usage analytics, as well as a number of features related to theft recovery. So for example, if a device doesn't get returned, and we find out about it, we can actually turn it into a brick so that it can't do anything, can't even log in. It just shows a nice friendly message saying, thank you so much for finding our device. If you could please return this to Southwestern City Schools, we appreciate it. So that's a kind of a necessary tool. We implemented that very early on last spring, before we started distributing all of the devices to be taken home. Now, this is the second tool here, GoGuardian Teacher. That one we're just currently piloting. This one allows teachers to see and control student devices remotely. So if a teacher wants to say, for today's lesson, I only want you to go to these 4 or 5 websites, they have that level of control. They can see actively in real time what students are doing on their devices remotely through this tool. So again, we're just piloting that one right now. We have a similar tool that we've been using for a number of years that this one, drawing a blank on what it's called. No, I'm not gonna be able to come up with it. And this one may replace it if we like it better, teachers like it better. Actually, the early feedback on this one is that they really do like this one a lot. G Suite Enterprise for Education. Again, Google's made available a number of advanced Google Meet features, things like allowing to control the participants more in meets. If you've heard news about, kids bombing meets, they're having a class session and some unwanted visitor comes in or does something inappropriate, they give controls like that. They're going to allow for breakout rooms, things like that within the Meet environment. And another tool that's available through G Suite Enterprise is originality reports is what it's called. It does plagiarism scanning so that you can take a paper turned in by a student, scan the internet for like matches, make sure that they're citing their references correctly. And this one will also even allow us to scan internal so that we can also check for that kind of, do that kind of check across students within our own Google domain. And then here real quickly, we replaced our antivirus service. We had been using Symantec for a number of years, but they were purchased by another company and became much more expensive. And so we ended up finding this 37.4 is actually an Ohio-based company. So we completely replaced all of our antivirus throughout the district. And then these last two items, I only wanted to mention them because they're major, huge endeavors. We moved our entire district to a new domain and upgraded all of our servers. And the only reason I wanted to mention them is because of the technologies that we have in place with virtual servers and that kind of VMware technology. This was all done with no downtime. We didn't have to take any servers offline or anything. The technologies these days allow you to do even major projects like this, you know, completely unnoticed by your users. And so I just wanted to mention it because it's kind of a big deal that you can do that much work and nobody even notices and doesn't have to disrupt the operations at all. So that's all we wanted to share with you tonight. If you have any questions or any areas I didn't cover?
Just really quick with the GoGuardian Teacher, does that also allow, so like if a student can't find something, they can kind of digitally hold their hand and say,
Yes.
oh, it's here?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It provides those sort of features as well.
Any other questions?
It's just really impressive. I mean, knowing where we came from with Oregon Trail and the blue screens of death with Windows 98, like, you know, having completely virtual servers and all of the stuff that the tools that you've made available, in addition to having, you know, Chromebooks for every one of our students. I mean, we are light years ahead of where we were not that long ago. And this team has just done an impressive job of making all of those things work seamlessly. And so kudos to this whole team.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Mr. Levin. And next up, we have local report card, Heidi Stevenson.
Good evening, President Ragland, members of the board, Dr. Wise, and Mr. Garside. I'll provide an update with a report card and also some information on testing. Report cards are designed to give parents, communities, educators, and policymakers information about the performance of districts and schools to celebrate success and identify areas of improvement. The information from district and school report cards provides transparent reporting on student performance, drives local conversations on continuous improvement, and identifies schools to receive intensive support. The goal is to ensure high expectations and equitable outcomes for all of Ohio students. The state's education community experienced unprecedented impacts during the 2019-2020 school year due to the coronavirus pandemic. Due to the ordered school building closure, limited data exists compared with prior years. In light of these impacts, the report card this year looks much different. Typically, there are 6 components and 10 measures. This year, there were only 3 components. From the 2019-2020 school year, we had results from the graduation rate, improving at-risk K-3, and prepared for success. Southwestern City School District had a graduation rate that increased 0.2%. It went from 87.9 to 88.1 for the 4-year average. And the 5-year average was a plus 1.3% from 89.1 to 90.4%. The prepared for success increased 1.5% from a 30.5 to a 32% overall. And the K-3 indicator was raised to 100%. This was based on a decision of parent, teacher, and administrator moving students to 4th grade. Currently, the state of testing is in flux. As of now, we're moving forward with testing. Senate Bill 358 has met with the committee 3 times, and currently there's no scheduled date for a vote. Senate Bill 358 is a broad-ranging bill and addresses Ohio's graduation requirements, teacher evaluations, state takeover of low-performing schools, including testing waivers. The bill would eliminate those standardized tests that are only required by the state. It would also require that the Ohio Department of Education would have to seek a waiver from the federal government. The United States Department of Education has declined the 2020-2021 testing waivers, but there's speculation that after the election, decisions may be made. That is the current up-to-date information with testing. Next week, we're starting with the 3rd grade English Language Arts assessment with staff and making sure that they're trained appropriately. That's all I have for the testing updates and for the report card.
Thank you. Any questions? Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
And next up, Facilities Development, Mr. David Donofrio.
Thank you, President Ragland, and good evening, everyone. On tonight's agenda for facilities development, we have one item to approve the Kingston Building change order proposal for HVAC control retrofit not to exceed $46,000. Having reviewed this item, I recommend its passage and move to do so at this time.
I'm happy to second that, Mr. President. Schreiner.
Mr. Donofrio.
Yes.
Mr. Schreiner.
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes,
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. And next up, Personnel, Vice President Kathy Johnson.
thank you, President Ragland. This evening, there are 6 personnel items involving 162 persons. They include 5 certificated and administrative resignations, 1 certificated change in employment status, 101 certificated employments, 7 classified resignations, 7 classified changes in employment status, and 41 classified employments. Having reviewed these, I move them for passage.
Second, Anthony Caldwell.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes,
Caldwell.
Yes.
Mr. Donofrio.
Yes.
Mr. Schreiner.
Yes.
Ragland.
Yes. And next up, items for discussion. None. And then also next up, need a motion for adjournment.
I'll move we adjourn.
Second, Anthony Caldwell.
Johnson.
Yes.
Caldwell.
Yes.
Donofrio.
Yes.
Mr. Schreiner.
Yes.
Mr. Ragland.
Yes. Thank you very much. And remember to wear your mask, wash your hands, and practice social distance.